So what you're saying is that masculinity is unfit for this world, which to me, go f yourself, because men need to be in this world. The polarity of masculine and feminine is why this world works well. And when we start to take men out of their power and out of being a role in this society, we are not left with a positive society.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing and very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I am your host, Frank Rich, and I just need to tell you how incredibly grateful and excited I am to have you here with me today. Man, do we have a jam-packed episode. Our guest is somebody that's truly remarkable life and story. He's been on the front lines, former military. We'll get into introing him here in a minute, kind of telling you what we get into in today's conversation. Before I jump into all that, guys, let me remind you of our great sponsor that we have here, guys. Today's sponsor in this show is brought to you by none other than Covenant Eyes. You know, we love Covenant Eyes here. I've been telling you about them for the past couple of weeks here and recommend them all the time. Now, you know, Covenant Eyes has been helping people overcome pornography for over 21 years now with their world-class accountability software and insightful educational resources. Covenant Eyes and our team here, we understand that people find freedom through supportive and authentic relationships, starting with those conversations that are so vitally important to have. Now, the thing with Covenant Eyes, they've been around long enough to know that porn affects everyone, men, women, children. It literally has an impact on everybody's lives. And we have a message for all of you. If you're struggling with porn or you have somebody that's struggling in your life with this issue, we want to let you know that you are not alone. We are here to help, both at the Superhuman Life and our company, Rebuild Recovery, and most importantly, with this new formed partnership with Covenant Eyes. And because we're here to help, we're here to support you, whether it's in your life or somebody that's in your life is struggling with this. We want to help. So we have a special offer for you. Covenant Eyes would like to give you a free 30-day trial to their software by using promo code Superhuman. That's one word, Superhuman, at checkout. Guys, all you need to do is visit www.covenanteyes.com or hit the link down there in the description box and enter that code Superhuman at checkout to get your first month absolutely free. So how does this work, guys? You know, what does Covenant Eyes and Rebuild Recovery have to do together? Well, I believe, and I've talked about this for the past few weeks, guys, that these softwares, these apps, something like Covenant Eyes is a supplement regimen. It should be in addition to what you're actively doing. So when we talk about the reboot, rewiring process, hopefully you have a plan in place on how you're going to build a life without pornography, and using a tool, using a software like Covenant Eyes to build a stronger barrier around your life is incredibly powerful. So visit the code or visit the link down in the description box or covenanteyes.com and use code Superhuman for checkout. Now, guys, let's get into introing our guest for today. Guys, I have Johnny Elsasser on the call with me. Johnny Elsasser is a former Special Operations U.S. Army Ranger with 4 combat tours between Iraq and Afghanistan and another 5 years protecting the U.S. ambassador to Iraq in Baghdad. Johnny has seen the field of masculinity through extreme alpha perspectives and knows the trials and tribulations that all men face, including the toughest men, and how we have to deal with this within society today. Now, Johnny's new mission is to help men find strength in developing their authentic masculinity to be consistent with who they are and not what society expects them to be. Johnny has shifted his fight to advocating and supporting men in finding their own masculine blueprint and cultivating their purpose and positive men in the world today. So guys, we get into, Johnny's story, a little bit about what led him to choosing the Special Operations U.S. Army Ranger. Some really cool kind of stories that he shares there with, how he landed in special ops. We break down, what is society, what's wrong in as far as how people are viewing and teaching masculinity. We talk about, this word, I'm sure you've all have heard it, toxic masculinity. What is this? Why has this become such a prevalent issue in today's society? Where is it stemming from? And what do we need to do to fix it? We talk about taking ownership in your life and building and creating and finding your purpose. And more importantly, we walk you through a process to build your masculine blueprint. And actually have Johnny evaluate some things that I'm putting in place in my life and things I've been working on for the past 2 years. So it's really cool to kind of get some real, live coaching when I shared with him what I was doing as far as creating kind of a blueprint for my life, guys. So this is a jam-packed conversation filled with insights, takeaways to become a better man, to become a stronger man, to become a better father, to become a more masculine present in your life, guys. So without further ado, let's get into today's conversation, writing your own masculine blueprint with Johnny Elsasser. Hope you guys enjoy. Johnny, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Hey, Frank, man, it's great to be on here, brother. I appreciate you taking the time to have me on and jam out with you for a little bit today.
Absolutely, man. I'm really looking forward to sharing a little bit about your story and kind of what's really kind of gotten you to the point where you have this podcast, The Art of Masculinity. You're doing amazing coaching and retreats and kind of all the service and work that you're putting out into the world. But before we get in there, man, because we are a show and I myself love the United States. It's the greatest country in the world. I want to start off today with just acknowledging you and thanking you for your service. We've had a handful of military men, going all the way back to the first episode with one of my best friends in the world, Zach Zenios, former Marine. And we had Kyle Mason on. We've interviewed Tom Shea, who was a Navy SEAL, Roman Roberts, Anthony Truck. So, you're joining a long list of celebrated men, impactful men. So once again, I want to thank you for your service in what you've done for our great country. Absolutely,
Thank you.
man. Absolutely. And maybe that's a great place to start. It's not every day you get a chance to talk with, Special Ops U.S. Army Ranger. So I'm kind of curious, what role did maybe your upbringing, or maybe we can kind of go back to, the beginning here a little bit, kind of, your childhood or upbringing. What role did that play in getting you into the military? And what was that initial journey like of getting into, the Army Rangers?
Yeah, brother, it's such a great question, and it's funny because more and more people have been asking me about that. And I'll put a huge disclaimer out there. My family, I have no pedigree in the military, like whatsoever. So like my family doesn't have a military background, nothing like that. My uncle grew up in the 50s. I'm really close to him. He's my godfather. Really, just a man of integrity, but also a man of respect. He grew up as a fighter his whole life, boxed up in Buffalo, New York, grew up in some really tough times. The mob was around during that time, but he held a high level of respect for family, for women, and for people who couldn't protect themselves. And so he and I have always been really close my whole life. And he kind of passed that along to me. And I carried that with me from, a young age to when I started going into the military. And at the time, I was a very present kid. I didn't look to the future. I didn't really care about the past. I didn't look to the future. I was very present. Now, this is a double-edged sword because I didn't plan for college. I did nothing to test for college. I had all these friends showing up with letters of acceptance to college, and I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, shit, I was supposed to do something, right? Like, what was I supposed to do? And I literally found myself in an Army recruiting office. And this was in 2004, so fresh after 9/11. The war was really hot in Iraq, and I had just found myself in there. So when I found myself in there, I didn't think about it. Super present. I went through the medical indoctrination program, the MEPS, and when I got there, they were just like, "Hey, we're going to send you to a regular Army unit." And I had heard about Special Operations, so I was like, well, I'd love to get Rangers, airborne Rangers in my contract. And they were like, you can just go to your regular unit. You can get that later. And I was a 17-year-old kid. Like my parents had to emancipate me to do this. 17-year-old kid. I'm like, D3, okay, cool. Well, that's not really how that goes in the military. It's not that easy. So when I actually, in a fortuitous turn of events for myself and for my trajectory in life, in basic training, I was just a PT stud from playing soccer and just being strong and being willing to just always give everything to compete. I was maxing out all my PT stuff. And one of my drill sergeants came to me one day and was like, "Hey, Elsasser." And I was like, "Yeah, Drill Sergeant Paul." He's like, "Hey, where you want to go? Special Forces, Rangers, snipers, what you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, Drill Sergeant Paul, I'd love to go Army Rangers." He's like, "All right, get your ass upstairs." So I go upstairs. Next day, come out from chow, and he yells at me again. And I'm thinking, like, I totally had forgot about this conversation. I'm thinking I'm in trouble. He calls me over, hands me an Airborne Ranger contract. I sign it on his back. And next thing I know, I'm going through Airborne School, Ranger Indoctrination Program, and going to 2nd Ranger Battalion. And the whole time, to answer your question in a really long-winded way, was when I got there, what carried me through it was the fact that I was present. I didn't look for tomorrow. I didn't care how much pain I was in, because I knew pain couldn't last forever. And I was persistent. And I had a high level of integrity for myself and for my family that my uncle had passed on to me, that I didn't want to let anybody down. So I was like, I'm just going to show up every day. I'm not going to quit, and I'm going to continue to persevere. And that led me to going into 2nd Ranger Battalion and, doing all kinds of good stuff over there.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I appreciate you, kind of prefacing and laying the context here for, what got you in there. You speak of these terms, presence and even integrity. It's something we can, sure, with the work and you're doing now, it's a major part of the coaching and everything. If you want to be a man of integrity. But at the time, I'm curious, because you don't hear a lot of high school kids, you don't hear a lot of people in their 20s as well using these words, presence and even being a man of integrity. So at the time, were you aware of this? Like, were you aware of the fact that you were present? And how did you kind of get to that point at such a young age?
Dude, I mean, that's a very good question. So to the presence part, no, I wasn't aware I was present. I realized that as I got older, when I looked back at my life, I was like, man, I really never worried about what tomorrow was going to hold. I didn't care. I literally just cared about the moment I was in. And my wife and I talk about this all the time, because that's a huge part of who I am to this day. I literally love the moments I'm in. And it also makes me a terrible Instagrammer, because I don't post like shit like right away or like in the moment, because I feel like it's kind of disrespectful for the moment, right?
Well, I love that you said that so much, because I can't tell you how many times, I've been with people, and we're at the beach, or we're kind of enjoying an event, and it's like I'm looking around and everybody's experiencing it through their phone. And it's like, no, if you put this down, actually what you're here for is truly remarkable. But it's like you're capturing the moment, not because you're experiencing it, because you want to show other people, oh, look at what I'm doing. And you're not even fully embracing the moment. I love that you said that, because I've experienced the same thing. It's like,
Yep.
look at the sun. Like, this is a moment in time. Be present here. Instagram doesn't care if that sun is setting where you are. So no, that's an incredible point there.
Yeah, but it's actually allowed me to realize it more now that I am such a present person, but it also in turn makes me a terrible like Instagrammer, or like terrible at doing like, just being an influencer like in the moment. So I try not to do that stuff, but I really enjoy that part of me as well. So I realized that later in life, presence was something that's always been part of who I was when I look back retrospectively. But when it comes to integrity, I always knew I had a high level of integrity. I may not have classified it with that term during the times of growing up, but I was always, my uncle, and my father's still alive, so I want to preface that. He and I just weren't always close, but my uncle and I were really close. And the reason why I say that is because I did know I had a high level of integrity, because my word was truly my bond. If I said something, I committed to it. If I told you I was going to do something for you, I would do it for you. And it didn't matter if I had all kinds of other stuff going on that day. I made it a point to always fulfill those promises. So I always had that high level of integrity for other people, but for myself too. If I said I was going to do something for me, like there was no escaping it. It's like, nope, I got to go do that. I have to go do that. So I always held that level of integrity, and that was kind of the one that I did know about as a young kid.
Yeah, that's great. Now growing up, were you like a high level athlete? You talked about, not really knowing what the Rangers were, but it's like you got in there and you're just crushing PT test after PT test to PT test. So was that due to, like you had maybe laid the foundation playing sports and whatnot as a kid?
Absolutely, man. I was a high level athlete. I was a soccer player and I played literally just year round constantly. I grew up in California. So the weather was, well, I grew up in the Central Valley. It was hot, but it was never like super freezing cold. But I played all kinds of soccer teams. I was on at one time in high school, like my senior year, I was on the number one team ranked in California. We were like 48-0 in the whole entire state. So I was a high level soccer player at that time. And that really helped me. That's part of why I was crushing like the 2 mile run and stuff like that. It was crazy. So that helped me with a lot of that stuff, but it also helped me with the competition, and it also helped me understand that I already was at an elite level for my age, and to then kind of push that forward into special operations. Now it was a whole different ball game. It was a whole different switch for elite, but it allowed me to like taste what that was like and then bring forward the effort that elite levels require.
Yeah. So here we are, 2004, 2005. I mean, you kind of mentioned we're at the height of, Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm trying to think back, like I was 20, 21 myself. And I was at a point in my life where I wasn't too sure. I tried university. It wasn't working. I did 2 semesters, and, much like you, I didn't lay a lot of the foundation in high school. Like I lived high school for the moment, and I didn't think about what the future was going to hold. So I was at a point, and I'll share this with you. So it was, what are you going to do with your life, Frank? And I mean, I was at this close to stepping into a Navy's recruiter's office, and fortunate, I landed a sales position, which changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, a lot of things I'm doing today, the foundation was laid in like 20, 21 years old with some of those initial jobs. So what was the early years like, or what, if any, can you kind of share with us about your experience in the Special Ops Army Rangers during those years?
Yeah, it's funny because people think that like once you get through the indoctrination program, like if you're a SEALs, once you get through BUDS, and once you get through Special Forces training, once you get through Ranger indoctrination, everybody thinks like, oh, you're Special Ops and like everything's cool and you're elite. Bro, you get the shit kicked out of you regularly, especially that first year as a private. That shit was worse than like the training I went through. So like when people are like, "Oh yeah, you're just hanging out," and like all of a sudden you're this magical elite soldier. No, 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 no. It's all about time, and you put in a crap ton of time. You're held to a very high standard because again, we were training for war. I went to my first deployment like 2 months after I got to battalion. So literally your life as one of my squad members, your life is on the line 2 months after I got to battalion. So you want me to be good. There's a high standard there. And in special operations, you're allowed to be kicked out. So like if you're not good enough, you can be kicked out. And what we had in Rangers was RFS, which is called release for standards. And we can kick people out for that, which the regular military can't really do. So in that case, you always had to meet this high level. So that first year was like, dude, it was miserable. I didn't have a weekend. I didn't have nights. I'd have a sergeant that would come pull us out of freaking bed in the middle of the night or on a weekend on Saturday and Sunday. And we would just train. He'd kick the crap out of us. We'd train, kick the crap out of us. That was literally rinse and repeat for the first year of my life in battalion, at least. And it taught me a lot, but it also taught me this importance of foundation. And this is what I love teaching men, because the fact that nobody, like, people want to say you rise to the occasion. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall back to your lowest level of training. And that's why we were so good as elite soldiers. We trained so much that our lowest level of training made other people look like embarrassments. So when everything hit the fan and you were just performing on instincts, your foundational skills were so high that you didn't have to rise to the occasion, because when you fell back, you were still far above everybody else. That's what made us elite. And that's what makes men in today. If you're really going to put time in yourself, that's what makes you elite. You have to continue to train yourself and train your mindset. So I'm big about foundational skills, because without a foundation, a strong foundation, you're just building a shaky building on top of nothing, and it's going to eventually fall. And that's one of the biggest things I took from special ops and that I love about that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that so much that I'm going to ask you to repeat it. Just the one line with "you don't rise to your level, you fall back." Just because I think that's so important. It applies obviously to elite levels, but it applies to our everyday lives. I mean, sharing with you the work that I do, outside of running this podcast, is helping men overcome their issues with porn and masturbation. And it's like at the end of the day, I built my entire company on one sentence, and it's in order to overcome your addiction to pornography, you must become the man that's no longer addicted to porn. And it falls back to that become. We must become a different individual, and it's based upon these virtues, these values, these character traits. Like, you want to not look at pornography today, create the life that is so well designed for you that it doesn't even become an option. So if you can't just repeat that one more time, we're probably going to turn this into some quote cards and some clips and whatnot, but it was so profound. I just want to make sure that the listeners hear it not once, twice, but a third time. So if you can, Johnny, share that
Brother.
line one more time for me, brother.
No, absolutely. And take it and use it wherever you can, man, because I think
Yeah.
it's important. Yeah. You don't rise up to meet the level you don't rise up to meet the level that you need to. You fall back to your lowest level of training. When anything happens in life, that's just where it's at. So yeah, you don't rise to the challenge, you fall back to your lowest level of training.
Yeah, that's incredible. So we're here just kind of getting back to the story here, where we're special ops rangers. We're experiencing all this training. Did you ever think about making it a career? I know you only did about a 4.5-year stint. Did you ever look at the military as potentially like the long-term career? And if so, what was the deciding factor for you not to pursue that path?
Absolutely, man. It would have been really smart for me to make it a career. I could have done 20 years and been 37 and gotten out with a full freaking retirement, because I got in at 17. So honestly, it would have been really smart. So I thought about it, but we were still, when I got out in 2008 from doing that, we were still really hot in the war, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And not to get political, but like Obama had come into presidency and we knew he was going to change the rules of engagement. And he did. And he really, at that time, tied the hands of a lot of special operations dudes, like everybody, actually. He tied the hands and he made us more vulnerable to being exposed to losing our brothers. And I didn't necessarily want to be part of that change in the rules of engagement with how we had to apply force to the terrorists overseas. So I was at a point where I had some friends who were doing protection for the Department of State and for the CIA. And they said, hey, man, you can come over. And there's a company right now that's only hiring like special operations former special operations dudes. At the time, it was Triple Canopy. And they said, come on over and like, you'll make good money and you can do protection. You can still use your skills, but you're doing a little bit different of a job. So, and at the time we were still having a lot of trouble in Iraq, and Baghdad was where like the embassy was. So I decided, hey, it's either I'm going to go, get my hands tied in spec ops, or I can go over here and still have my hands tied, but be making some money. So I was like, well, I guess I'll take the money on that. So at that time I was like, okay, let me make that decision. And so I did, and went out and started working for a company called Triple Canopy. And then I protected the U.S. ambassador to Iraq for about 5 years out of Baghdad.
Got it. Yeah, no, thank you for thank you for sharing that, and being real and honest. Obviously, us here, like, we don't know the inner workings of it, but no, that was great. So I know one thing that's been major in kind of your transition and getting into the work that you do today is that transitioning out of military, even this secondary post kind of contractor role, and then getting back into civilian life. So can you kind of maybe walk us through what the transition was like and kind of how that began to maybe shift your paradigm on some things? And ultimately, I'm sure that's what's gotten you into launching the podcast and then all the work with men. So yeah, what was kind of that transition of getting back into civilian life, and what were kind of some of those aha moments that really kind of changed the perspective for you?
Yeah, brother. The transition is hard. The transition's hard for any high octane job. I'm starting to realize the more I speak with people and have people on the podcast from different walks of life, from elite athletes to, cops to military, anybody that's in a high octane or elite job, there's a very, very tough transition outside of that. And part of that becomes, well, number one, what is my purpose now? I no longer have this huge mission that I had for so many years. How am I going to write my own purpose? And that doesn't get taught to any of us, especially when you're coming out of, I'll use this for military people, especially coming out of the military. You have standard operating procedures. You have SOPs that operate your life. You have this box, these four corners that you operate in, and everything tells you what your day is supposed to look like, what your goals are for that day to have achievement and everything else. And you just tick those off, right? Well, imagine yourself getting out of that lifestyle and then me saying, "Hey, Frank, bro, you got no more list. Not only do you have no more list, you get to make your list." But Frank's like, "Well, I don't really have a purpose. So how do I make a list for something I don't know where I want to go?" Right? Like that's exactly what it's like for transition. And we're not taught that. So transitioning out, I found myself in, when I transitioned out of protection in 2013, I found myself working for the State Department as a government employee. And after it took about 6 months, and I realized, I was like looking around and I was like, dude, I'm just like a cog in the wheel. What's this mission? Like I'm pressing keys on a computer, and I'm not changing anything. And a lot of the stuff that's going on is really stupid. And I'm like, whoa, like who am I right now? And then when I had that realization, I started to really lose myself. And then once that happens to any of us, all of a sudden, this is where drugs or porn or alcohol or any of the addictions that you want to list that are really toxic to us end up coming in. And people either stay in that or they make it the choice to eventually get out of it. Well, for me, it ended up in a failed marriage. It ended up to me drinking way too much. And I was like, bro, this isn't you. You were this high level dude overseas. You were a tactical commander. You were doing protection. You were an elite soldier with Rangers. Bro, you're acting like an idiot. You're not happy with who you are. And when you look in the mirror, you don't even recognize the guy that you are. This was the conversation I had. I was like, I don't even like this dude. And I was like, holy shit. Like, either I'm going to stay in this and the rest of my life is going to be real toxic, or I'm going to get out of it now. So in all honesty, and I know that I've listened to some of your stuff on this and totally back your opinion on it. But in all honesty, bodybuilding was the thing that got me out of it for a second. Now, obviously understanding health-wise, bodybuilding isn't like always true health, right? But it got me out of it because it gave me a small goal. And it held me to a high standard because I wanted to compete. I didn't want to just go on there and flop. I wanted to compete. And I've always loved working out. So I was like, let me just do this. So when I transitioned, I needed to get back to something that allowed me to find some type of elite level. And that gave me a stepping stone to get out of that own toxic mindset. I stopped drinking because I used to be one of those guys. It's like if I was drinking, I was going all the way or I wasn't having any. It was one or the other, bro. And that's where a lot of people are when they come from these jobs. But that transition, nobody teaches you about that when you come out of these jobs. Nobody tells you that you get the opportunity to live life on your terms, but you need to actually figure out what those terms are going to look like, for you, or you're going to find yourself being unhappy, depressed, sad, judgmental, angry, all that stuff. And that's where I found myself. So that kicker that came with a failed marriage and me judging myself as a man, I was like, holy crap, I got to do something. And then I stepped out of that and I made that choice. Now, there's a whole nother piece to this about how I got into the self-development stuff, but I'll stop right there because that was a lot. But that's where I kind of flipped that switch.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely want to get to what got you into this whole space and world. I'm big on purpose as well. I mean, it's rooted in the mission of the podcast is to help you understand that you were created for a purpose, discover that purpose, and then do everything within your power to bring that purpose to life. I feel like so many people are kind of blindly walking through this world with lack of purpose. So curious what were kind of some of the initial steps that you took, but just to kind of touch on your bodybuilding point there, because this is something that I've touched on a lot. I have this kind of weird relationship with it where I know my career, I say career as an amateur bodybuilder was a major part of my life. I know that it definitely did some good, like the ability to seek discomfort, the ability to put yourself under these painful, getting sub 4% body fat, like it doesn't feel good. It's extremely challenging and nobody's forcing you to do it. So you willingly wake up every day seeking discomfort, seeking pain, I feel that is a character trait, that's a skill, that could serve really anybody. So it did do a lot of good for me. The same token, my bodybuilding was rooted in kind of some initial trauma, like the insecurities inside of myself. To work through a lot of that definitely fueled some of the addictive tendencies I had with it. But I definitely get what you're saying. It can be used as a tool, and at the same token, it can be a destructive thing as well. But for you with purpose, like what were some of the initial steps that you took to discover your purpose, or what do you do with the men that you coach here today to maybe find and unlock their purpose?
Well, first, there was a slap in the face from a book called Excuses Be Gone, written by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And the way he writes is just like a punch in the gut, which is what I needed, because I was sitting there with a chip on my shoulder. Like, I'd been overseas since I was 18 years old. I was all this stuff. And I was like, who are these guys to tell me anything about being a man, right? Like this big ego on my shoulder, right? And that's where I got slapped in the face by that book, where it was like, bro, you understand that the only reason you're not listening to these guys is because you're making an excuse. You're making an excuse of why you don't want to turn back, look at yourself, and step into the shadows and say, all right, man, what do we need to work on? Where are your insecurities? Why are they insecurities? And how can we move forward and build those up? I didn't want to do that, which is why I didn't want to listen to people. And then I was like, okay, well, finally that book allowed me to challenge myself. And I said, okay, challenge accepted. And it took me some, again, like you said, you put it perfectly, getting uncomfortable, taking that chip off my shoulder and starting to listen to podcasts and to read books about, people trying to give you tools and techniques to be better, to be your best version, right? To find out who you really are, which then can develop purpose. Because I want to put a disclaimer here too. There's a difference between passion and purpose. They're not one and the same. And a lot of people think that they just intersect, and they don't. I can have passion, but passion is completely fleeting. Passion is something that immediately when I get there, like, okay, cool, it's gone. I felt it, and now I need to go somewhere else. Purpose is something that drives you for a season, a huge season of your life, or for all your life. That purpose drives you every morning to say, hey, I'm not going to hit this today, tomorrow, or the next day. This is a long process, but it allows me to get up and say, that is meaningful. Any step I take towards that is meaningful. That's where purpose becomes very different from passion. And so when I found my purpose, I realized that, holy crap, if I wasn't listening to Frank, or I wasn't listening to Lewis or Josh Trent or any of these amazing dudes that have great podcasts trying to help people, then there's a lot of my brothers that could use this information that aren't going to listen to it. And I realized part of where my struggle was, and most men out there is, and you can attest to this, I'm sure, guys don't want to listen to people that they don't respect their background. And so I said, well, you know what? Now that I've started to do the work, now that I've started to accumulate tools, now that I've started to do the research on masculinity and all these other things, let me try to package this with my background, which most men can at least respect, to give me a few minutes of their time, and then start to try to give them some tools that they can take back into their lives if they give me 5 or 10 minutes. So that's where the podcast came up, but that's where my purpose was developed. It was seriously thinking back to all the conversations of my brothers overseas, happy to be back in the Middle East when they have a family back at home, because they didn't know how to do regular life back with people, and they were like, oh, it's so great to be back here. Bro, it is not great to be back here. You have kids, you have a wife, like, what the hell, man? That's such a terrible mindset. But it's because they couldn't understand how to live that life back in the States, and they couldn't understand that they need to have some conversations with themselves, and they didn't have the tools to cope with that. And so that's where the purpose became. So many men out there are struggling with that, because we also are placed in a box of saying, like, this is what a man's supposed to be, that my purpose became, well, let's open that up. Let's create true authenticity, and let's start to write this story for ourselves, because I wasn't writing it for myself, but now I get to. That's where that purpose came into play.
Yeah, I love that, and I want to get your take here in a minute on what you think it means to be a man, and maybe how that's changed over the years. But I'm so glad you kind of you added that disclaimer there with passion and purpose, and explaining the difference. There's going to be many things rooted in somebody's purpose that they may not be passionate about. Like here with the work, there's parts of building, rebuild, recovery that need to be done on a daily basis that I don't enjoy doing it, but because it's fueling the purpose, like I understand it needs to be done. And at the same token, there's many things that I'm passionate about that don't align with my purpose. So I need to understand that there's both, that there is a purpose for my life. And this is what I need to use as my guiding star for every decision that I make. There's going to be some of those things that I don't really feel passion with, but as long as it's centered and rooted in that purpose. And then also understanding that I can't just chase passion. I can't just chase things that I'm passionate about, because if it's not taking me anywhere centered, then I'm just going around doing a lot of things that I'm passionate and happy about, and I'm not moving anywhere. So I'm so glad that you added that disclaimer in there. Speaking of, because you talked about, how you're struggling with a man and how can this guy help me if he hasn't seen the things that I've gone through. Johnny, I know this may be a difficult question to answer, but we had Ryan Mickler on from Order of Man. I'm sure you're familiar with his work, and we kind of did a whole talk on what it meant to be a man. So I'm curious with you, as this special ops guy, like masculine bodybuilder, strong alpha in one sense, and now vulnerability and authenticity is kind of your bread and butter work. What does it mean to you to be a man? And second part of that question, how has that changed over your lifetime with getting out of the military, maybe having this false perception of what you thought a man was, and then getting into today's time?
Dude, it's such a great question, because it seriously has shifted so much. I used to believe that there was like men had to work hard. I was in this like men had to be big physical presences. They had to be able to fight. They had to be able to protect. They had to be able to do like a lot of these things that I started to really think about now. Like, not every man aligns with that shit. And not only that, but like a lot of guys I respect are highly intellectual, couldn't defend themselves from a rabbit. And I'm like, but I respect them as men. Why would I respect them as men if they don't meet what my old perception of being a man was? So I had to really think about this, because it threw me for a loop, right? Like a lot of people respect Stephen Hawking, right? Brilliant, was a game changer in science for us. Did people not respect him just because he couldn't do anything for himself, but he could outthink every single person on this planet? No, they respected him. It's the same thing with a lot of people around. Not everybody embodies this. Masculinity and being a man, quote unquote, it becomes very subjective. If we take this back to the root of the sociological studies on masculinity, they've only been studied since about the 70s. The 70s. 1973, I think it was. Raewyn Connell, a transgender woman out of Australia, was the first one to actually start doing sociological studies on masculinity. When that happened, we started to see, holy crap, not only does masculinity not transfer cross-culturally, it doesn't even transfer cross-regionally in the United States. Masculinity becomes incredibly subjective. So being a man becomes, what are your values as a man? And a lot of this is based on four core principles. And that's the Essentialist, the Positivist, the Normative, and the Semiotic theories. All four of these theories end up helping us to write the story of what we believe a man is in our early stages of life. So the Essentialist, I'll just briefly, I'm not going to like dive into him too much just for the sake of the podcast, but the Essentialist is a guy who basically picks one piece of masculine attributes and says, okay, somebody who's a protector, that's a man, right? Just a protector. So all of a sudden, he could be this significant doomsday prepper and has a compound in the middle of the mountains of Colorado. And all of a sudden, if he meets Frank, and Frank's this really well-rounded dude, but doesn't have a compound for doomsday, you're all of a sudden not a protector in his eyes. You're not a man. Literally, he wouldn't consider you a man. So all of a sudden, well, what does it really mean to be a man then? Because he based it off of one piece. That's the Essentialist. You have somebody that follows the Positivist. Somebody that follows that says they basically took 10 men. I'm just giving an example of a number, but they took 10 men in their immediate vicinity, and whatever the average actions of those men were, that became a masculine action. So 7 out of 10 did this, that's masculine. So now all of a sudden they built their traits off of what the majority of men did in their immediate vicinity. The normative theory, a lot of us I know a lot of my early days of who a man should be was based around the normative theory. And that's around like what we see on TV, what we see in movies, John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, all these guys. We based that on who we were supposed to be and how they presented themselves in movies. And we said, that's supposed to be a man, right? A lot of us did that. And the last one is the semiotic theory. The semiotic theory is where we take basically attributes or actions of what a man does and say that's masculine. So we see our father doing these things and we associate those actions with masculinity, and we see our mother doing things and we associate those actions with femininity. So at the end of the day, all this becomes your whole version of what a man is was written on subjectivity, or was written on social influences. And then what happens is, as guys, we don't take the moment to look and say, take inventory of all these beliefs that we think what a man should be, and say, and challenge them and say, do I really support that? Is that how I see myself? Is that how I want to present myself? Am I even aligned with that? Because that's where authenticity comes in. So at the end of the day, what it means to be a man, in my eyes, means to take ownership of the traits and ways that you want to present yourself as a man to this world, and own that every day. Make sure that you own those traits and attributes. And it could be somebody who's highly intellectual, but can't go in the ring, in the octagon, and have a freaking, BJJ grappling match, or have freaking UFC MMA style fighting. Like, they may not do that, but it doesn't mean that their version of masculinity is any different from anybody else's. It's subjective. So at the end of the day, owning that authenticity, as long as you are confident in who you are as a man and you show up as that dude every day, that's what I want guys to be right now. We need men to step up and own who they are, because the main problem is we're having guys killing themselves way too often, suicide rates like 3 times as many as women, right? And then we're having guys stuck in depression and sadness and addiction because the fact that they're just not aligned with what the hell they believed a man to be. A lot of them. And that's really hurting them because they can't ever own confidence. They can't own who they are in this world. So it leads them down toxic mindsets and struggling. So really, that's my belief in what a man should be, or in this world today, what a man is.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So we covered here kind of the 4, ways that maybe our perception as men is shaped through our upbringing, different influences, society, and whatnot. Let's flip it and just let's talk about kind of the perception of masculinity within the society today. You hear this kind of word, toxic masculinity thrown around. What's your take on just the terminology in general? What is really, I won't say what's happening here, but yeah, just kind of, talk to, toxic masculinity if you can for a moment here. Cause I know that's a major thing. Like, the world is telling us, like, it's not good to be a man. The white man is evil and whatnot. What is this doing to kind of shape our perception of masculinity right now?
This is such another good question because of the times we're in. But number one, society has no concept of what a man should be. So if anybody's listening to media about how a man should be, like, they should just be putting a middle finger up, because at the end of the day, media has been trying to condition us, men and women, since about the 50s. After World War II, everybody came back home. You had Mad Men take over how to market. They've been marketing and positioning that marketing on what men are supposed to do, how they're supposed to be, just like women, right? So this whole social experiment has been going on for a long time of conditioning us, which is why that alignment's jacked up. But then when we talk about this new wave of freaking media, psychological operation that they're doing on everybody, we start talking about how they start terming things like toxic masculinity. Well, let's break this down for a second, because you guys all know I'm big on foundations. Well, what does toxicity mean? Its definition means unfit for consumption. So what you're saying is that masculinity is unfit for this world, is unfit for us to be, right? Which, to me, go fuck yourself, because men need to be in this world. The polarity of masculine and feminine is why this world works well. And when we start to take men out of their power and out of being a role in this society, we are not left with a positive society, because you can go look in other societies around the world that are run in matriarchs and they have their own toxic behaviors. So I hate when people say toxic masculinity. Now, are there traits within masculinity and femininity that anybody can make toxic or make harsh or make wrong? Sure, absolutely. There's traits that we can betray and use for insidious reasons, but we're not sitting here saying that the entire feminine way of being is toxic, are we? No, because it's not. And that's the whole thing. When people want to say that, I think that they're, ignorant to actually what they're saying, and they're just parroting what's going on in the media. And what's happening, in my opinion, is men are being emasculated because of the fact that the media needs to attack them, to say, oh, you guys have had this power for too long, there's the patriarchy, and like things are unequal. No, they're just trying to create dissension, and they're trying to create anarchy and confusion. What's really happening is there's this beautiful balance right now in today's society when you look at the equality of where women are up to now and where men are, and how everybody, when I was working in the government, most of my bosses were female. Right. And so like, you want to tell me that there's this real disparity that's still going on, significant to back in like the 80s and maybe even the early 90s? No, it's very different now. And so they're trying to attack men and emasculate men so they can continue to almost disenfranchise us and then make us not own this power that we actually have to be a huge contributing member to society. And in all honesty, like when we look at things where you look at something that, again, I don't want to get political, but like you look at things around the world where warlords kind of take control of areas, right? When they do this in foreign countries and stuff like that, well, what happens? They basically run in there and they kill off all the men, they leave the women, and then they take the children. Okay, well, why would you do that? If men weren't such a powerful force in this world to create balance, why would you do that? It's because we are, and good men need to continue to stand up, and good men need to stop being emasculated. But society wants to rip that down because they don't want good men standing up, because then they can create this imbalance within society. So I hate this term toxic masculinity. I think I would challenge anybody that wants to say that to have a conversation about it and prove that they're not ignorant to the term, because at the end of the day, that's my position, is they are.
Yeah, and I love that you actually broke down and defined what the words mean. It's something I do a lot in the content and videos that I create. It's like, if we can understand what words really mean, both in the words that we're using in and about ourselves, and then the words that we're actually talking about our actions. So it's like, we're using this word because it sounds like, oh, toxic masculinity, men are toxic. And it's like, no, you actually broke it down. And it's like just saying that it's not fit for society, but it's not fit for the society that you're trying to create in your own world. So at one token, you're telling all the men like they're, pursuing things and achieving and driving for goals and status and money is toxic. But at the same time, you're telling women like, you want to be a strong woman, go be a man. And it's like, I could definitely get wrapped up and go down a long rabbit hole. We might have to do another conversation with you one day and just kind of, do a political kind of, whatnot. But no, I want to keep it more to the masculinity here. So we've identified what is shaping our perception, and how it's kind of guiding men down the wrong path. We talked about how society is viewing it. So if man is hearing this, he's kind of, a light bulb just kind of went off in his head. He's like, oh, my perception of masculinity, what I've been trying to do in my life, the things that I've been chasing have all been distorted. Let's now break it down into actionable. Like, what does a guy do now? So what are some of the, maybe is it a series of questions he needs to ask himself? Does he do kind of an internal audit to where a man can kind of understand, like, what is his ideal of masculinity? Does it make sense? The question,
Yeah,
like, how does a man begin to kind of understand, like, where is his perception and ideal of masculinity coming from? And how does he begin to shift it out of maybe some of, I don't want to say toxic, but out of where he is now and getting him to the right place?
Absolutely. No, that makes total sense. And it's such a great question, because of the fact that this is something I work with guys on a lot, and I help them find what I consider their masculine blueprint. And a lot of, if we take this just one step back for a second, so when we're from about 2 years old to 8 years old, our brains are in what's called theta. And in theta waves, this is where hypnosis works. So we're completely malleable and we're able to be conditioned. This is why society and the things that we see and the way people speak to us, it's so impressionable on us because of the fact that in those years, our brains are just being molded. A lot of our foundations written between that 2 to 8 years old. Now, after 8 years old, we still make decisions on things that we bring into our brain based on who we respect and value. But from 2 to 8, we're almost just like this sponge and blank canvas for society to really condition. And so what I challenge guys to do first and foremost is sit down and start writing out the traits that you believe currently that you believe a man should be, right? So just write those down and look at them. Take like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just write down as many as you can think of that you believe you value in a man right now in your current mindset. And then look at them and start crossing off the ones that you're like, I don't really believe that. I don't really believe that. And maybe circle the ones that you do believe. Circle the ones that still resonate with you. And then I tell guys to go ahead and actually think about the traits of men in their current life, of how they present themselves, and say, hey, what are those traits that you value in maybe some of your friends, in the people you look up to? Maybe it's colleagues, whatever. What are some of those traits in those men that you value and that you may not have yet? And then write those down. And what you're doing is you're starting to now consciously make your masculine blueprint. You're starting to say, whoa, okay, this is where my alignment comes into play. Now, all of a sudden, I'm creating a list built on the things that I'm choosing to keep in my life after I take inventory of the things that were written for me. And then I'm choosing the traits in other men that I like, that I want to start showing up with as well. Now, again, especially when it comes to that, it's going to take work. It's not just going to be like, oh, I made the decision, all of a sudden it comes up. No, that's not how it works. Like, it's going to take work. But we have to remember that the story for us as men was written for us. It wasn't written by us. If we haven't taken the time to actually do this inventory and challenge ourselves to see what's aligned with us, we haven't written the story for ourselves yet. We're still playing by somebody else's playbook. Right. And so at this point, you're taking down, you're keeping the things from your past that you like, and then you're adding in things that you like from other people. And then you basically create that into one big power list of all the traits that you believe a man to be. Now, what I do with guys is I go a step further from that, as I have them create only 3 to 5 of these as their core values as a man. And I have mine. I keep mine right here on my computer. And I do this because it reminds me every time I come into my office that if I'm showing up as these 5 pieces of what I believe a man should be, if I show up as those every day and in every conversation in this podcast and everything I do, then I will never leave a scenario with regret, with shame, with judgment. I'll always leave it being authentic with who I am. And so that's the whole point of that. The masculine blueprint becomes 3 to 5 traits. And I classify it as 3 to 5 traits because, again, big foundational guy, we don't rise to the occasion. We fall back to the lowest level of training. When we have 3 to 5 things that we can fall back to, I can remember 3 to 5 pieces always. And I can remind myself of what those 3 to 5 pieces are, no matter how emotional I get in a conversation, no matter how angry I get, no matter how much I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, my instincts, I can create a foundation that I can drop down to, that I can always bring out in myself and make sure that I remember and uphold those values. So that's why I say 3 to 5. And then that becomes your true masculine blueprint. Those are the foundational pieces that you step on every day. And then the rest that are in that list, in the big list that you took your 3 to 5 pieces from, those become add-ons as you become more conditioned to represent authenticity every day, to own that authenticity. And then you start putting on those extra pieces because you're able to. Your lowest level of training now is so high, you can start increasing that training, right? And then you make that lowest level even higher. So that's where the masculine blueprint, that's the steps I challenge guys to take. And it doesn't take more than, 15 to 30 minutes. Give yourself that. If you're not willing to give yourself 15 to 30 minutes, you got a lot of work to do other than just this, but give yourself 15 to 30 minutes and start assessing who you want to be.
Yeah, I love this concept here, and I want to share with you. I have a list of 5 traits or virtues or whatnot. I've really been working on, and I won't say perfecting these, but understanding what they really mean in my life. And it's something I recite every morning before I start my day, and I constantly am kind of thinking when I'm showing up in situations and whatnot. Are you open to sharing what your personal 5 are, and then I'll share mine, and I'd love to get kind of some of your feedback on what I put together.
Absolutely. I love this. Yeah. So what I've come down to in my life is that the 5 pieces for me are integrity, communication, intelligence, something I used to not really value too much, support. I used to not value support whatsoever. Everything was competition to me, and then protect. Those are my 5 things. So integrity, communication, intelligence, support, and protect.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Very close to mine. Mine are honor, integrity, courage, discipline, and wisdom. And I'll break down how I got to each one of them. Honor, like I honored you at the beginning of the call. I want to be a man that respects and honors those that have laid the foundation for this life that I'm so grateful to live. So I honor everybody that's, served on military. I honor God in everything that I do. So honor, integrity. I want to be a man of my word. I want people to know that when I say something, that I'm going to follow through and I'm going to get it done. And also the things that I say to and about myself. So honor, integrity, courage. I'm willing to seek out and do scary things every single day. And I'm going to seek them as much as I possibly can, because that's what's going to shape and grow and continue to evolve me. So honor, integrity, courage, discipline, willing to delay gratification, understanding that I'm working towards a bigger picture, bigger vision for my life. And sometimes I got to be willing to delay that in the moment. So discipline. And then the 5th one is wisdom. Everything is rooted and for me, it's rooted in the word of God. Understanding that there's a lot of intelligence, there's a lot of knowledge out there, but there's only one ultimate source of wisdom, and that's the Bible. So those are my 5. Just curious, kind of your take. Did I get close to nailing? Like, if I was a student, would I have passed?
I love it. Absolutely, man. You've written a definition that makes sense in your life and allows you to be authentic with it, because that's the whole point. Is you've identified them as values that you can always resonate with, and then you know how to pull them out when every moment arises, and you live by them. And that's where authenticity and ownership comes up. So I love yours, man. And yeah, very similar to mine, which is great. People don't, but I want everybody to listen to, is we had 2 different, while they were close, we had 2 different set values, and we probably explained them a little differently as well in our values. So that's where being a man today, that right there is an example of how subjective these can be. And I've seen guys that are completely different from mine, but that's what they believe a strong man is. And that's great, man, because that's their authenticity.
Yeah. And that's their segment that they're in. No, I love that. Talk about mentors if you can, because you said something here with kind of understanding like your ideal and even shaping your own values. Like, if you're struggling to maybe find your values, or maybe even like discover like what are my strengths, what's even my purpose. This can definitely be something I can feel help a guy. You talked about looking at people that like inspire you, and I've shared this before. Like, if you're struggling with maybe taking that step of like, I want to launch a business, or I'm not really happy where I'm at, but I don't really know what I should be doing. Look at the people that motivate and inspire you. There's probably something about them that you see in yourself. Now you have to work through it, and you have to maybe go through some training or learn new skill sets or whatnot. But if you can see people that are inspiring you, more often than not, there's going to be something in them that is living inside of you as well. So who have been kind of some of the mentors or role models in your life? And, yeah, just kind of how has that helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, brother. I'm so when it comes to that, I've learned, especially since I, took that chip off my shoulder years ago. But when you realize that, people that are right next to you can be a mentor, or people right next to you can inspire you to change, or want to add some trait into your blueprint that you believe and hold high value for, those mentors and influences can be all around you. And so for me, I've started to realize it's been guys that I've recently connected with. It's been guys in my tribe. One of my good buddies, two of my good buddies came actually just a couple weeks ago, and we were having a boys' weekend out here in Charleston and deep sea fishing. And the way they hold themselves as men, how loving and supportive they are, but how intelligent and how strong they are. It's all, they present these values that I'm like, wow, man, like I really want to add a little more of that into my life. And then, like you said, listening to podcasts are great ones. Like I see mentors, or I see people who inspire me, people who I look to for, guidance, kind of like mentors, maybe not in essence that I talk to them personally, but I see how they present themselves, how they speak, and I start to say, oh, that can be somebody who guides me. So it's not necessarily always somebody just immediately in your life. For me, my uncle's always been a huge mentor to me. Actually, a mentor right now in my life is Anthony Trucks. He and I have become good friends. I'm part of his mastermind. He's an amazing human being, but I look at him as a mentor, not because of who he is as like his notoriety. I look at him as the man he is. I've seen how he is with his kids and his wife. I see how he treats everybody he comes in contact with. Take away the fact that he was an NFL athlete. Take away the fact that he's an amazing speaker and business builder. As a man, I respect the hell out of him. And that's where I look to mentors, because that's somebody that I can say, wow, how he shows up with everybody that he touches. Everybody remembers him because of how he treats everyone and how he speaks and how he acts. Like, he is an amazing dude. So that's another big mentor of mine. I've had other mentors in the past, like Chris Harder. He has a great podcast, For the Love of Money, and became a friend of mine as well. And then, other guys in my life like JB Spiso, who's a former, he was a former first sergeant in Ranger Battalion, amazing dude. But a lot of guys that have come into my life, and nowadays it's starting to be more and more, especially you guys like yourself, Frank, that are just amazing dudes, really trying to impact this world from a heart-centered place. I see so many values in you. I'm like, dude, I kind of want to, I want to add some of what Frank's got going on. I want to add some of his, honor and discipline into my life, how I treat other people in those ways. Like, that's where I start to see things even from guys like you. So to everybody out there, if you're open to receiving this and you take that chip off your shoulder, you're going to start finding people who inspire and influence you in a positive way. They're going to start showing up more and more in your life. But if you continue to hold that wall up and be guarded and not open up to people and not be vulnerable, you're not going to allow those experiences and those people to come into your life, because they're not going to gravitate towards you because you're not allowing them in anyways.
Yeah, that's great. We had Anthony on. Anthony's incredible. Yeah. We talked about the NFL for maybe 2 minutes, and then the rest was just his life, his marriage. Right? Just an incredible speaker. And we had Super Bowl champion Steve Weatherford on as well, and he shared this insight. He's like, I asked him, who do you learn from? Who are your mentors? He's like, brother, when you look at things the right way, when you have the right perception, everybody in your life becomes a mentor. You have something to learn from everybody, but you got to start with that upstairs. You got to be willing to go into every interaction, every conversation, the cashier at the gas station, the person bringing up my groceries, have something to learn from them if I'm open to letting them share it with me. And it starts with that. So, brother, it's amazing. And thank you. I mean, I'm incredibly, grateful to have been connected with you here. And I think hopefully this is the beginning of a relationship where we can continue to support each other as well. I want to bring it home. We have one question. I'm gonna give you a chance to kind of share everything. But what, just one last question, just for men and kind of masculinity and vulnerability. If a guy's hearing this, what's one, maybe two things that a guy can do, implement immediately into his life to maybe begin to show up more authentically, maybe show up more vulnerable, 1, 2 kind of tactics that literally like can hang up the call today and walk away and start doing in his life immediately.
Yeah, brother. The first thing that I always give guys, because it's the easiest thing to do, is I do either you can call it a door handle check or a threshold check, because sometimes there's no door handle there. And basically what that means is before you step foot on the other side of whatever threshold you're about to go into, think about the man that you want to show up as. Give yourself 30 seconds or 60 seconds and say, how do I want the interactions on the other side of this door to be, right? And as soon as you do that, you can change your chemical response within your body like that, like just immediately from being whatever crap you were coming from work. You can change that with 60 seconds of asking yourself, how do I want to show up on the other side of this door for my family, for my spouse, for my dog if I'm single and I just have a dog? Like, you can actually make that determination, and people don't realize the power of our minds, but we have that ability to say, how do I want to show up as that man? Think about, I always relate this to, like, every guy has this scenario, but when they've had a girlfriend and they're like, hey, come to this party with me, or when they had somebody they were dating, they're like, hey, come to this party with me, and they're like, ah, crap, I don't know anybody at this party, this is gonna suck, right? You've already set the intention that it's gonna suck. So guess what's gonna happen when you get there? It's not gonna be fun, man, right? So now it's like, well, why don't we flip that? Why don't we before we go into a situation, ask yourself how you want to show up, and ask yourself, what's your intention for that? Hey, man, my intention is really, like you said it, you can learn, like Steve Weatherford said, you can learn from everybody if you're open to it. Well, how about saying, hey, my intention before I get to this party is to really listen and like learn from people and ask questions. I'm not going to talk too much. I just really want to ask questions. If you set intentions like that and you tell yourself, I want to be a man who shows up and is inquisitive and is happy, then you've already changed the outcome of that scenario and you haven't even been there yet. So give yourself that opportunity before a door, before a situation, and allow yourself to think about who you want to be and your intention for that situation. And I might give you 3 here because this other one's really simple, but it's really impactful, and Frank's doing it right now. All you have to do is put a smile on your face. Literally, if you put a smile on your face, it changes the chemical response again within your body, and people aren't aware that you can be feeling like crap. Completely just give yourself a smile for like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden the next interaction becomes very different from what you thought it was going to be, or the way that you think about the next thing in your day becomes very different from what you thought it was going to be. So just putting a smile on your face. And the last thing for me is really, really look at yourself in the mirror and honestly tell yourself, I love this guy. Like, tell yourself you love yourself every day, because we as men, we suck at giving ourselves praise. We're great at being our worst critics, amazing at it, but we are terrible at giving ourselves gratitude, at giving ourselves a pat on the back, at showing ourselves love. We will beat the crap out of ourselves all day psychologically, but we won't give ourselves positive feedback. So give yourself some positivity, whether that's looking in the mirror and saying, bro, I love you, man. I'm excited for today. When I'm brushing my teeth, I'm excited for today. I can't wait for everything that's going to happen, right? Like, give yourself that, or give yourself something you're grateful about yourself. Dude, I am grateful for the husband that I am. I am grateful for how I show up for my wife and I support her and love her. Or I'm grateful for the skills that I have. I'm grateful for the way that I show up and support other people in my life. Like, whatever you want to tell yourself, but be grateful for specifics about you. And the last one in that same realm is, or write an affirmation, put it on a sticky note and put it on your mirror and just read it every morning. And an affirmation can be like, I love the fact that I show up every day with integrity and honor myself and the man that I am. That can be an affirmation you throw on your mirror, and then every day you just read that. Those 3 tactics of, the door threshold, the smile, and being grateful or showing yourself love in some way, shape, or form. Those 3 things are incredible in improving your mindset, your life, and improving the man that you are. Just those 3 small tactics alone.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about kind of the neurochemical effects of smiling, or even with gratitude. You get hits of serotonin. Like, I truly believe life is a game of neurochemistry. And when you understand how to leverage some of these tools in your advantage, like, you're in the driver's seat at all times. Like, you're in the driver's seat of your emotional state, you're in the driver's seat of your mental state, you're in the driver's seat of just how you're showing up in the world. So little things like smiling, like, it literally releases chemicals in your brain. That's a lot of the, what we talk about with the work in rehabilitation recovery as well. So Bro, this has been absolutely amazing. So grateful for you sharing, for your wisdom, knowledge, everything. Guys interested in you, learning more about you, the show, the podcast. I know you have a retreat coming up at the end of the year. So tell us where to connect with you online, or hang out socially, and where can guys learn more about Johnny Elsasser and the art of masculinity.
Yeah, brother. I first and foremost just truly want to say thank you again, and how much gratitude I have for you for, number one, being an amazing host on the show, but then number two, the work that you're doing in this world to support men and to support people out there to really kind of breaking through some of these negative things in our lives and actually creating a life of happiness and joy. So truly appreciative for your work, brother. Thank you for having me on the show, man. So much. For me, guys, you can find me I hang out the most on Instagram. As we found out, I don't post real-time stuff very well, but I am on there more than any other social media. So you can find me at johnny.elsasser on Instagram. And then you can head over to my website, johnnyelsasser.com, if you want to know more about any of the stuff that I got going on as far as courses. And then, yeah, like Frank said, we have the Wild Man experience that's going on at the end of this year, October 21st to the 24th. We still have a couple more spots as of this episode available. So if you guys are interested, it's a fun time. It's VIP wrapped in special operations, wrapped in self-development. So we shoot guns from helicopters, and we also hang out at nighttime, have a couple beers, and talk real stuff as men around a bonfire. And then we get up and shoot out of moving vehicles, and we shoot sniper rifles out to like 1,000 yards. But then we're still having real conversations about struggles and what we're going through at mealtime. So like we do a lot of this balancing of this masculine, cool environment with, actually developing as men and creating a tribe of men that we leave with, that we're bonded to when we leave this event. So that's coming up August 21st to the 24th. Anybody interested, go ahead and shoot me a message over on Instagram, or shoot me a message via email at johnny@johnnyelsasser.com.
Got it. No, appreciate that. And guys, we'll get all the info for the Instagram, for the website, the podcast, and the event. I mean, it sounds like an epic week. Obviously, the last year and a half, 2 years have been crazy. It's important for us to seek fellowship, to seek community, to get in environments, to get uncomfortable, to do things out of the ordinary. So guys, if you're interested in joining that, like I said, we'll link all this stuff down in the show notes there below. But as we bring it home here today, Johnny, we have this final question we ask every single guest. I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast, you know what's coming. But, the genesis of this podcast has been a result of my own kind of transformation. So when I talk about living Superhuman life, I touched on it briefly at the beginning of the show here. It's the understanding or belief that we were put on this earth for a purpose. And then it's our job, our responsibility, our duty here in this life to manifest, to bring that to life, whether it's, taking advantage of the physical skills, maybe some of the other gifts that we've been given. So it's kind of a co-piloting partnership with creator, or whatever your spiritual beliefs are. That's that for each is their own, but it's understanding that we're partnering with that, and it's our job to bring everything kind of to life. So that's what I really talk about when I talk about living Superhuman life. It's more about like a belief, or kind of the way that I look at living this world. But I love to get the guest take. So Johnny Elsasser, as we bring it to home here today, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Oh man, I love this question, because I truly believe now, in the mindset I've shifted to, that we all are superhuman. We all have this ability to really impact this world in a way that we desire and is authentic with us. And I would say that living that superhuman life is finding where your superpower is and doubling down on that and showing that light to the world. Don't be unapologetic about it. It doesn't don't ask for, permission. Just shine that light and impact as many people as you can when you find out what that superpower is, no matter what it is too, I've had people ask me what mine is, and I have this weird way of being able to synthesize information and give really complex things down to like this base level that is really tangible for so many people. It's not sexy. It's not sexy at all, but I love the fact that I can do it. And I've started to do my best to bring that more to the world. So living honestly and whatever that superpower is that you define, living honestly, having integrity with yourself to honor that superpower and letting that impact the world as much as possible. That's living the superhuman life. Because at the end of the day, you can't take money with you. You can't take anything that's tangible in this world with you. But what you do get to do is not have regret by the time you get to your last day. And if you live a superhuman life where you're actually living your superpowers out and impacting people, you're not going to have regret. You're going to say you lived it to the fullest, regardless of what the end state is. So just remember that we all have that power and we can all bring that to light. Just honor that in yourself.
Absolutely love that. And we're all incredibly grateful that you've uncovered your superpower, and we're going to encourage you to continue to double down. We're going to support you in any way we possibly can. So Johnny, thank you again for this. Guys, you heard it out there. Live yourself authentically. Don't be ashamed. Don't be worried with what others think. You have a light. You have a purpose in this world, and it's your job, your responsibility to bring that to serve other people and make this experience that we're all having here together truly remarkable. So we appreciate you guys so much. If you're out there and you enjoyed this conversation, you can help us continue to grow this podcast in two different ways. First off, if you're listening there on audio side and you haven't done so yet, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or written review. But more importantly, if somebody in your life needs to hear today's conversation, please do us a favor with sharing this or any of the other 86 episodes that we've had up until this point. But for Johnny Elsasser, Frank Rich, guys, we love you so much. We'll see you next week.